Listen, we're all lamenting about the fact that we're going to have to pay higher electricity bills in the coming months or so. But I wonder whether if we shift, the way we approach this and take a look at the fact that this could actually be an opportunity or maybe even a push for corporations, for consumers to switch, as you say, towards a greener future.
I think that is exactly what this is. We know for climate reasons that we need quite a dramatic shift quite quickly. But we also know by experience in Australia that we now produce the cheapest electricity in the world in terms of our rooftop solar on our homes and on our small businesses. That produces electricity at 5-ish cents a kilowatt hour. It's a third or a quarter of the cost of the grid. And we know that big wind projects and big solar projects are delivering electricity cheaper than coal and gas at the moment.
Okay, it's pretty clear from the federal election that Australia has voted for a cleaner, greener future. And I was reading a report from the Clean Energy Regulator that showed Australians installed record amounts of rooftop solar last year. So obviously the culture is changing here. We're looking towards a cleaner future. What else needs to be done?
Yeah, it's amazing. Australia, if you're overseas, and I work in Europe and the US as well, our Australian rooftop solar is known as the Australian rooftop miracle. And we are, exactly like you said, more than 30% of households now have installed this. They've had a positive experience. And I think, touching on the election, not only was it in some respects a climate election, it was a community-oriented election. And so what has to happen next in our communities is the electrification of our vehicles, and then the electrification of all the things that currently run on gas in our households. So hot water heaters and kitchens and space heaters. And we know that if we do those, and if we help Australians in the same way we help them with the rooftop solar, we'll get all of those things to a place where they are cheaper than and better for the household than what they're doing today. And at Rewiring Australia, we actually modeled the economics of this out, and we may be in a little bit of a blip of a price rise this year because of the situation in Ukraine, but by 2030 Australians could be saving $3,000 and as much as $5,000 per household if they go all in on electrifying the house and electrifying their vehicles.
I want to come back to the topic of rewiring Australia, but first of all, I want to talk about the new Prime Minister's clear direction for Australia heading towards a more cleaner, greener future. Let's hear from him.
Together we can end the climate wars. Together we can take advantage of the opportunity for Australia to be a renewable energy superpower.
That's Anthony Albanese there on his victory day, in his victory speech there. A renewable energy superpower. That is a huge call. So can Australia do that, and how?
So I'm optimistic, perhaps even more optimistic than the Prime Minister. Australia has the easiest path to zero emissions of any nation because of our mild climate, our spectacular renewable resources, a reasonably functioning government that has given us things like very cheap rooftop solar. And if we do all of that, we can easily eliminate the emissions from our domestic economy. But to become a renewable energy superpower, that means actually making a lot more energy than we do today, which is what we already do. We sell coal and we sell gas to Asia and to Europe. But make a huge amount of electricity with our renewables and turn it into green steel and green hydrogen and aluminium and other products that the rest of the world will need to meet their climate targets. So we can probably produce 300 or 400% of the amount of energy we need for Australians and use that to become the export industry that honestly will make much higher revenues than our fossil export industry.
Okay, so where does your project, Rewiring Australia, fall into all of these plans?
So, as many of the viewers will know, the emission targets we need to hit to stay on target for a 1.5 degree world are now better than 50% reductions by 2030, maybe as much as 75%. And that means we have to make real gains and real reductions this decade. The renewable energy superpower story is good, but it's not technologies you can buy off the shelf, and they're things that will happen next decade. So Rewiring Australia is very much existing to advocate for what they call demand side electrification. What is the demand side? That's where you, regular Australians, live. That's your cars, that's your homes, that's your natural gas devices and things that run on petrol. We know we can now electrify those cost effectively. We can power most of that from rooftop solar and community solar. We know that there'll be a lot of batteries everywhere to make all of that work. And we know that that economically works this decade for Australia and hits our climate target. So it's encouraging the renewable energy superpower goals in the long run, but it's making sure we have the eye on the prize of what we need to do this decade. And the great news for the world is if Australia shows the world how to do that on our households and our vehicles, then we're going to increase the ambition of the rest of the world's climate goals, because they'll see us doing it and they will want a slice of it too.
Sounds good, and it sounds very optimistic. Saul, thank you so much for being with us here on Weekend Breakfast. Saul Griffith there, the author of The Big Switch.